A year and a half ago, we were facing worst humanitarian disaster along with 4 countries literally on the brink of famine. And because of the experience and the expertise of this room, we've been able to avert famine. Accomplishments have been made, but quite frankly, when you look at the last 2 years, it's a sad plight upon humanity what has happened. Not only is the hunger rate reversing its change, now the hunger rate has gone up from 777 million to 821 million just 2 years. What's really provocative, though, is the fact that the severe hunger rate, those who are on the brink of starvation, don't know where their next meal is, gone from 80 million to 124 million people. That is an indictment on humanity. And as Mark was saying, most of that's driven by man-made conflict. 80% of our expenditures today are in literal man-made conflicts, and that's taking good dollars away from countries that aren't at war, that are fragile for a variety of reasons. What this resolution does is makes it very clear to the world. I mean, quite frankly, as I've said this, if you don't have food security, you're not going to have any other security. So we have to address the fundamentals. We know, for example, because when you, like we do, assist about 90-something million people on any given day around the world, you learn a lot about the realities on the ground in different environments, whether it's a natural disaster from a hurricane or a cyclone or anything like that, or a traditional war, or it might be extremism and fragile governments. You learn a lot about people. You learn what's going on in the neighborhood, what they're thinking. And one thing that we know, that people don't want to leave their home. They don't want to leave Africa or the Middle East or wherever they may be, because people generally around the world are the same. They've got thousands of years of culture and history or whatever it may be. We've seen, though, just from the war in Syria, which is indicative of other folks, that for every 1% increase in hunger, there's a 2% increase in migration. In fact, what we saw in the Syrian experience, before a Syrian would leave the country, they would move 2, 3, 4 times in their own country before they would eventually leave. Now, the cost for us to feed a Syrian in Syria is about 50 cents a day, which is almost double the normal cost because it's a war zone. That same Syrian, if that Syrian were in Berlin, for the total humanitarian cost is 50 euros per day. It's a better investment that if we address the root cause as opposed to reacting after the fact. And I think what some of those on this dais have already mentioned, I think we can't continue to do it the way we've always done it from the humanitarian perspective. We've got to understand clearly there's a humanitarian development nexus that results in peace and stability. How do we do things differently? So working with many of you in this room, and in fact, when I look over here to Gilbert Hungbo and IFAD and Graziana from FAO, what we are doing is partnering, bringing that nexus together. And we were just in Niger showcasing what happens when we come in with effective humanitarian development perspectives. Migration goes down. Teen pregnancies go down. Conflicts between herders and farmers goes down. The ability to recruit by ISIS or Al-Qaeda goes down because there's food security. So when we come in a holistic, comprehensive approach with food for asset programs, pooling our resources in a most effective way, as opposed to the traditional way of just saving lives. But when we can come in saving lives and changing lives. Graciana, you remember that woman that stood before us, Gilbert? And we did this food for asset program working together. And she had nothing before this program, nothing, no pride, no dignity. But now she owns a couple of acres of land because of this food for asset program creating markets. Then she bought, 5 acres of land. And the pride she had that no longer was she feeding her family, but now she was feeding her village. And then with the excess, she was selling to the market. This is what happens when we come in with effective programs. But what good is it if we have effective programs and don't scale up? I think in the United Nations, in the international community, we need to be realistic about which programs are effective and how do we scale up. Because when we scale up with effective programs, as I have said before, what good is it to be efficient if you're not effective? We've got solutions. All of us in this room working together with effective solutions, we can truly end world hunger. Now, man-made conflicts is a whole different ballgame. That needs to be addressed all by itself. But if we can address food security in the most effective way, it will at least eliminate food security as a component for war and conflict. And I believe in today's environment, that's the most important, the most effective direction that we can take working together. If we do it, especially when you have $300 trillion of wealth in the world today, and one child's dying every 5 seconds, it's inexcusable. We've got solutions. We need commitment, and we need execution.